So folks, as consumers pay more at the pump and many voters are supportive of the government taking action to reduce cost, over 70% of respondents in a poll said they would support a tax holiday at the federal and state tax level. And this would mean that the governments could reduce gasoline taxes over a period of time to cut costs for consumers. In other words, if you're on low and middle income, if you're a low and middle income household in America, then you can expect to receive a stimulus check in the mail very soon. Other popular measures included asking domestic producers to increase their oil production and the release of barrels from strategic reserves. The White House has said that they're supportive of domestic producers increasing their production. Leaders on Capitol Hill, everybody, have even had their own ideas and introduced various proposals that could actually bring costs down for consumers. Some of the proposals include a gas stimulus check, similar to an economic impact payment made by the IRS. Gavin Newsom, everybody, also said this. He wants to counter spiking gas prices by sending $400 per vehicle payment to drivers and freezing a gas tax tied to inflation. Also, Governor Newsom wants to offer $400 debit cards that are tied to vehicle ownership, that cap at 2 vehicles per household, and there will be no income eligibility threshold. He's also pressing ahead with a plan called a scheduled July 1st hike in the state's gas tax tied to inflation. And the governor is seeking $750 million to fund 3 months of public transit for commuters. The debit cards would actually go to drivers regardless of whether they own a gas or electric powered vehicle. According to the governor's office, the total cost would be roughly $11 billion, a commitment made possible by a booming budget surplus. And those who file their taxes under the single individual states will be able to receive the benefit if they make less than $75,000 a year. And after $80,000, the quantity distributed will begin to decrease. For those that file it jointly, the cut of it is $150,000, folks. Now, the Oregon Congressman, Peter DeFazio, also introduced a bill. There is a long list of states that are actually sending out their own state stimulus checks and some tax rebate checks. After weeks of discussions of providing some kind of economic relief to people in Delaware, the governor in the state plans to use part of the state's record-setting surplus to give each resident a $300 stimulus check. This $186 million plan is paid out of state surplus. It would send a direct check to any person in Delaware that filed a 2020 tax return. In an official statement, the governor said, "My hope is that these direct payments will provide some measure of relief for Delaware families who are dealing with higher costs at the grocery store and at the gas pump. These direct payments to Delaware families are part of a broader, responsible budget proposal." And earlier this month, everybody, House Republicans unveiled a plan that would direct $1,100 stimulus checks to people in Delaware. As the crisis enters its second year, the supply chain continues to be overwhelmed with delays and workforce shortages, as well as being unable to keep up with skyrocketing demand. The annual inflation rate in the nation accelerated to 7.9% last month.
I now yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Grothman.
Wow. Great. Thank you for coming over here. Not all of our witnesses nowadays come over and see us in person, so I'd like to thank you for that.
Second year in a row, sir.
Very good. Little comment before, I think there was a comment that the 17% increase in AmeriCorps might not be quite enough. I'll point out, given the current situation, nobody should ever get a 17%. Nobody should even get a 5% increase, so whatever. There's my comment. I recently was looking at some graphs, and in them it showed that the there are different measures of monetary supply, but M2 might not be the best measurement. But recently it's been up 40% year over year. And I'm old enough to remember the inflation of the 70s. At the time, M2 was going up about 7% a year, and that was considered out of line. So I'm just alarmed out of my mind that we have so much money apparently being printed by the Federal Reserve at this time. And of course, one can try to blame it on something else, but I think clearly the inflation, which I think is well over 7%, because when I talk to my farmers or talk to my manufacturers, their costs of production are frequently up 80, 90%. So I can't help but think when their final product gets to market, it's going to be a lot more than 7%. But could you comment on the massive increase in the money supply? Do you think that might have something to do with inflation? And don't you believe with the relatively high spending in this budget that the money supply is going to go up even more, which means inflation is going to go up more?
So, sir, you probably know this and it'll be frustrating, but we leave monetary policy for the Fed for exactly the reason we don't want monetary policy to be subsumed in our great political process, and it is outside of that process. So I will leave monetary policy for the Reserve, and I'm sure they have the tools in which to manage most of our inflation crisis. But I've gone over what the president believes we can do from an administration to deal with this. I'd also point out many have talked about the ARP legislation. I sat with Moody's economists yesterday who truly believe that we would have seen a double-dip recession had it not been for ARP. But we may have different solutions, but we agree we have to do something to bring down pressures on pocketbook issues for Americans.
I guess I would think that, well, ultimately it's up to the Fed to make those decisions.
So there are new important details, everybody, that the government has announced for monthly benefits for all seniors. Social Security, SSI, SSDI, RRB, and VA beneficiaries, as well as anyone that wants to know the fourth stimulus check news. Continue watching this video because we got some very important information about this. There are several big pieces of information that you will learn by watching this video, all the way to the end. So, first, the good news is that for retirees, your monthly benefit check in January should be larger than the payments you received last year. This bump up in your benefits is due to the cost of living adjustment. Specifically because of high inflation, retirees are entitled to a 5.9% raise in 2022. This is intended to help ensure they don't lose ground as the price of goods and services only goes up. It's the biggest raise in decades because inflation is surging. Medicare premiums also went up. If you have premiums deducted directly from your Social Security payment, you will see some of your raise disappear as a result of higher premiums. Now there is another change related to taxes. So when you sign up for Social Security benefits, you can elect to have taxes taken out of your check, so you don't have to worry about paying estimated taxes to the IRS. You have a choice of either asking the SSA to withhold 7 to 22% of your monthly benefits, and you're having taxes withheld on a percentage basis. The SSA, the Social Security Administration that is, take a little bit more of your money every single year. But the unfortunate reality is that more retirees each year get affected by federal taxes on their Social Security benefits. This happens because the thresholds at which benefits become taxable are not adjusted due to inflation each year. As incomes naturally go up, more people end up with benefits above those thresholds that are frozen in place. Now, since the COLA was so large this year, and since many retirees may end up taking more money out of their savings to cope with the rising prices, this could be an even bigger issue for seniors. So if your provisional income is likely to go above the thresholds, you need to plan for the added taxes that you're going to owe. But there's a new bill that was just proposed. Lawmakers are trying to pass a bill that they say would attract more retirees to the state of New Mexico.